How are you, my friend?
Great, great. Well, we just had an awesome and interesting coaching call around children and essentially letting them be the extraordinary beings that they are instead of trying to control and direct them and dictate to them and all that kind of stuff. It's a really fascinating thing, isn't it? That whole Joshua concept around who children really are, because and it's once you actually understand what they're saying, which is that you choose the time and place of your birth, and when you arrive, you are a perfect vibrational match to the earth at that time. But the earth's vibration keeps rising. So therefore, when new children arrive, they arrive at a higher vibration than the rest of us who are already here. And I always sort of understood that because I used to see that children would arrive, as I put it, standing on our shoulders, not starting where we did. They kind of had the benefit of what had gone before, but I didn't understand it in a more metaphysical sense, you might say. But it is true. And they also give the evidence of technology that if I look at my mother who's 93, I don't think she even knows what a keyboard is really, in the sense that I don't think she's used one. And she's got a mobile phone, but only uses it as a phone, right? But she doesn't have, like dad, who was slightly older, he was pretty tech, but not compared to the kids in the family though. So that like most older people are pretty lousy at tech, most younger people are amazing. And people are always marveling at how young a child can be when they pick up tech. And Joshua says, well, the tech is a high vibration creation of a young generation. The tech has a high vibration and older people struggle to match that vibration. So, that's an interesting explanation of that as well. And then once you realize that we all have our pre-birth intentions and we've chosen our parents and the time and place of our birth and so on, then you see, right, that child has arrived for their own exploration. And I love that thing where Joshua said that when you are in a position of power, which a parent is, and you think that you need to control the conditions and control everything about how your child does everything, then you have the dictator.
No, but it's a microcosm even, right? So, you can apply it to our kids, but then you can also apply it at work, right? If you're a leader or a manager in a work situation, right? I mean, it really does. It's a trickle down effect. We're now applying, I think Joshua's teaching to our kids, but his teachings, the same teachings apply, letting go, accepting what is as perfect without trying to control it, right? Is the essence of the teaching, right? Is the essence, the core foundation that, everything is perfect. Everything is working out just as it should, right? And if we can just trust that, and we can trust in what's happening, then we would be able to live in less fear, have less limiting beliefs, right? Have less or have fewer manifestation events.
Didn't you say that to me the other day, that talking about taking these ideas into the workplace and taking these ideas like as a new form of business coaching, if you like, that I think you said that to me the other day, that that's something that either or both of us might want to investigate, just suggesting my
Yes,
camera.
spiritual CEOs.
Yeah. Because I think I said to you that a friend of Trace's son, who like 32, 33 years old, he's got this business making concrete stuff for concrete items. I don't even know what they are, for the construction industry, building industry. And, he's got a whole bunch of staff working for him, and they're essentially laborers. There's no career path, particularly, like they just do the job. And so there's fierce competition because, with the construction boom in many countries around the world, fierce competition for the staff. So if somebody offers a buck or half a buck more an hour, they're off. But he's actually got some spiritual guru guy who he consults with personally. And this is a pretty hard-nosed guy, by the way. His friends didn't seem to even know. He told us all about it on New Year's Eve. We ended up in a deep discussion over, too much champagne. But and he also provides this kind of spiritual coaching for the guys who work in the yard making the concrete products. And so his retention, he's not doing it for retention. He's doing it because he believes it. But he did say his staff retention is dramatically improved. So you make a good point, because I think about a previous business partner of mine, and I actually wrote down his initials next to the word dictator on the text because I thought that was exactly him. He was in a position of power. He felt like he knew best and he had to control everything and everybody. all of his staff, all his business partners, the board, his kids, his wife, his first wife, second wife, third wife, you name it. He controlled everybody. And I used to actually think of him as the dictator. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, that's what was happening. And I kind of riled against it. I didn't like it at all. But yeah, so this is the second time this has come up from you. So I'm thinking that on my coach registry website, internationalcoachregistry.com, I think I need to start creating a spiritual business coaching offer, right?
I think it's.
I'm writing
I had the
this
same.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same experience with a business partner, Rob. I used to call, and I was the president, he was the CEO, and I used to call it CEO stands for Child Emotional Outbursts, because that's all. I used to stamp his feet in the corner or whatever, I did. If if it wasn't his idea, it had to be his idea. And
that thing.
Get to the
yeah.
right. It's
If you had an idea, you had to basically allow him to have the idea. If it was my idea, it was dead in the water. If it was his idea, it was going to fly. But if I could somehow put my ego away, which I don't find that easy then. If I could put my ego away and let him have the idea with me having fed it to him, then we're away.
And that's, and I do, I'm in the same spot you were. And I think I was where Jen was talking on this call today about respect, right? She's like, one of my limiting beliefs for respect. One of mine, he was the gift in my life. This individual was the greatest gift I could have been given, because he literally laid waste to about 1,000 limiting beliefs I had. And he grew every one of them. He fed on a daily basis. And they bubbled over to the point where I had hit rock bottom and wanted to chew my arm off, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And as I look back now and I talk to people now, even the guy I'm currently, working with, he'll call me and say, hey, nobody respects me now. And I'm like, okay, like, I don't, like, how do you, what do you, and I'll ask him, like, well, how do you want to feel? Like, tell me what you think you need. Right. And like, you got people in your office 80 hours a week, like, they're killing themselves. Like, I don't understand what you're looking for. In his mind, it's never enough. He doesn't pay people overtime. He is the dictator beyond dictators, but it doesn't affect me. Like, he'll say to me, hey, I want to know exactly what you were doing. Give me a list. And I'm like, okay, it's on this shared document that I have. It's always up there. It's dynamic. It's real time. Like, okay. He's like, I don't see it. I'm like, okay, I'll reshare it with you. Like, it doesn't trigger me anymore. And I was in a point where it was triggering with my old business partner. Even when I started working with him, it was triggered. It was triggered initially, but through this work with Joshua and understanding that my worthiness, my respect, my value, it's not for him to decide, right? I finally got that. And I think for you and I, one of the things that we always connect on is that we were frustrated with how we viewed ourselves. We were frustrated that we couldn't see it from the higher perspective when we were going through it. We didn't realize what it was. We just knew we didn't like being triggered by these people. We didn't know we didn't like the way we felt, right, when we did those things. And then we look back afterwards, we were like, why, and then Joshua says, hey, let me teach you how to see things from a higher perspective. And you're like, oh, now I know I was feeling that way. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and then we see other people
triggered my rebel, right? My rebel, was like, my rebel was out there rebelling big time, which wasn't particularly helpful and didn't necessarily look that great in the workplace. But I didn't have a better mode at that point. But
we're taught, right, to strongest. Who's got it, right? But it's not. It's the if you and I actually, I'd love to brainstorm on this together to come up with these. I love numbers, right? What are these top 7 things to a spiritual workplace? And it is accepting what is and not judging or criticizing. As a group, we're all working together to get to and if you look at a family dynamic or a business dynamic, it's all the same. What I've realized with this week with the kids is that if I treat my wife the same way that Joshua says to treat my kids, if I treat my coworkers the same way Joshua asks me to treat my kids, if I treat my dad and my brother and my sister the same way Joshua is asking me to treat my kids, I will have a much more satisfying and fulfilling relationship along the entire chain, right? So along the entire chain.
So the parents thing is interesting. And I just want to comment about a parent thing. I also want to comment on what you said about treating everybody the same, the way you want to treat your kids. So last year, I think it was, in a boot camp, or the year before even, I suddenly had this realization that my mother and I are eternally connected, that she's only playing the role that I asked her to play in my pre-birth intentions, and that if she's being naughty or annoying, it was only because she was reflecting things about myself or acting out the pre-birth intentions, very kindly. And then I had this image came into my head of her and I are two actors on a stage in a stage play, and she's playing her part so convincingly that I am really getting worked up. And then when we walk off stage and the curtain closes, I look at her and I say, you really had me going there. I believed every little bit of that. Thank you so much. That was an amazing performance. And once I had that change in perspective about her, without anything else happening, no communication of anything, the next time I spoke to her, she was completely different. And so it changed, just that thought changed my relationship with her completely. And my father's not here anymore, he's passed away, but I'm just trying to get my camera working better here. But I realized also from the stuff that Joshua said about parents that their job is done potentially when you're conceived or born, or it may be that you had a pre-birth agreement for more. And then I thought, oh, I had this big list of things that I thought my father should be, and he wasn't those things, and therefore I was annoyed with him and upset and angry. And then I thought, well, where did my list come from? And I just made it up. I realized. So I thought, so if I throw my list away because it was just a silly thing I made up, then what did I have from him? And then I thought about all the amazing things that he was and that he did, which weren't necessarily from my ideal dad list, all the incredible things he brought into my life. And, he helped me, like when I started doing economics at school, he understood that really well. He helped me, and then he introduced me to astronomy, like looking at the moon and the heavens and stuff, and remote nebulae and Orion and everything when I was like 7 or 6 or something, with a telescope in the backyard. And that blew my mind completely. And to this day, I have a fascination with astronomy and also with the origin of the universe, creation mythology, and also the origin of consciousness, and in particular, when Source decided or had the thought to create physical reality, which you could say is the Big Bang or whatever, which we may get to talk to today as well. So that's all I want to say on that thing. But the second thing you said was to treat everybody in the way you treat your children. And so Joshua says maybe this week in what we're doing in the Ascension experience that when you come back to the non-physical, you will realize that everybody you encounter there, or every entity, or whatever you want to call it, everybody, what a word, every non-body, they're all the same. You love them all equally, and it's no longer you're my child and you're my parent and everything else, because those were just roles we adopted. And then you will actually have regard for them all and love equally. And so they're saying if you can actually get to that point, that is, in my words, not theirs, an ascended or superior, not superior, what's the word I want? That is a higher perspective, shall we say. So that's a really very good point you made. Yeah.
I really don't think I fully understood that until this week with this new section 8, right, which is your relationship with your children. And if you just dissect that, right, if you unpack that statement, it's really your relationship with everybody, right? Because we're all one, we're all equal. And I think that it's our relationship with the children is the most difficult, because we do believe we should control, right? We have a responsibility, we have a duty. I don't even know what the right adjective is, right? Some sort of, there is a accountability on us for our children, but there's not, and there really isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to keep them safe, right, up till where they can take care of themselves, right? That's our role, right?
Well,
the rational fear, you protect them with a rational fear, but all the other fears, the irrational fears, they're going to figure out themselves.
Well, we decide we know best, so we actually want to help them on the irrational fears as well. If you think about what I consider to be the astonishing miracle by which a man and a woman create a child and bring a physical body and a conscious entity into this world, like, it is because it happens all the time, it's been happening forever, we sort of take it for granted. And, all sorts of critters do the same thing in various ways. But it is the most astonishing thing. And in terms of the illusion of physical reality, that particular miracle, for want of a better word, is so powerful and so profound and so moving. It's hardly surprising that we are so super attached to our kids in particular, right? Because, they are of your body and blood and all the rest of it. It is the most, when you actually think about it logically and rationally, it is an astounding thing.
It is, and the funny thing is that humans, the physical humans, have nothing to do with it. When it comes to the getting together, the copulation part obviously is the only part that both play. The body takes care of everything themselves. Like we don't, you try to eat healthy, right? Do whatever.
Yeah.
The body does it all itself.
Yeah. So that's another thing that fascinates me, is the orchestration of our daily metabolism and life. Our cells and the digestion of food, the operation of the brain and the heart and all the organs and blah blah blah. I mean, like, the whole thing happens without any conscious control. And maybe a yogi can slow their breathing and slow their heart rate and all that sort of a thing, but that's pretty superficial compared to all of the processes going on in the body. And it is an astonishing thing that every creature on the planet is actually governed by the same life force. And science doesn't really understand it. We might say we do, but we don't particularly. And I guess it's all about source energy orchestrating everything.
And you just said it, we can dissect and we understand what body parts work where, but what's the energy driving it all, right? And it is the source energy. The even in today's political environment, with the pandemic and what's going on, all of the elements that are created are control and fear. If you removed any ideas of control or any ideas of fear, we would be in a much different spot, right? I don't know what that spot would be. I know we'd be in a different spot. I don't know, better or worse. I'm not here to say that.
Well, I mean, COVID has brought out some very interesting things in our society. So I think in New Zealand now, we're maybe 93% of eligible people, ignoring kids for the minute, have been double vaxxed, and maybe 40 or more triple. So anyway, there's a very small percentage, might be 7% of people have had none, and they make a lot of noise. And a lot of it's about the government control and taking away rights and freedoms. It's not necessarily very articulate, but they are pretty pissed off. And because they have diverse objections, and because they're not necessarily articulate with it, the other 93% tend to discount them pretty readily. But, and I've said this to you before, I don't actually hold those views that they have, but I can understand at that level why they are annoyed and upset, because they feel that something's been taken away from them. As to which side has the greater amount of fear, I don't know. It's probably both. But we were reminded today in a previous discussion that the three great fears that we have as humans are the fear of loss, the fear of the unknown, and the fear of rejection. And I guess the fear of loss and the unknown are the two that are playing out with people who are strongly pro or anti-vax or mask or mandates or whatever it might be, lockdowns, all of that stuff. And all of those, there are many people who are really strongly opinionated on one or the other, and it seems to be all around the fear of loss and the fear of the unknown.
Well, think about this. It's no two countries are the same in terms of their, right? So we're really getting the experience firsthand how people are taking all these different versions of control or all these different versions of fear, right? And I don't know what's right or wrong, to your point. Everybody says their way is the right way, but whatever works for everybody always works for me. I'm not, I don't really have an opinion, but it is, every country has a different approach. Yeah. And it's so interesting to me to see, even if the fears are different because there's a different approach, right? To your point, maybe it's, either, we're not going to do this because you're not vaccinated, or we're not going to do this because you are vaccinated, whatever it may be, or you're not going to do this because you're not wearing a mask, right? So for me, if you choose to go through life, and this is the greatest manifestation event the world has ever seen, right? And for all of us, if we choose to go through life waiting and looking for that to affect us, right, then it will. It's no question. It hasn't touched me. COVID has not touched. I've had COVID twice. I'm out in 3 or 4 days and never serious, thank God. But in my life, in my family life, everybody in my family's had it as well twice. Um, we traveled everywhere. We've done everything. We just follow the rules. We do what we're supposed to. We've been working from home. We have not one negative effect because of COVID. We're living in COVID and we're being respectful of society's needs, right? As we're here to live in society. But there are people, my parents, my mom, before she died, didn't leave the house for 1.5 years. Didn't leave the house. Did not leave her house. So it's so interesting to me to see how all of these are playing on these, and it's a control. Either we're trying to control, or we're letting other people dictate how we should or shouldn't be controlled. And all these fears are being created, and we're living them out. Joshua had on a call, I think 356 or 355, a woman had asked, I live in Canada, we're in lockdown again, I don't know what to do. And he was like, really? Do you not? I mean, she's like, well, I can't go out to dinner and I want to go. I'm like, well, can you go to a restaurant? Can you get all the food you need? Can you have the same people you're going to go to dinner with over? Can you really?
That was very good, wasn't it? That was 355, I think.
Yeah. And it was a great answer. You're like, well, you really can then.
Yeah.
I'm like,
which is basically your lack of freedom is in your mind. So if you focus on that, that's what you're going to actually see. I'm just looking for that thing about the dictator. So when a person perceives themselves as a victim, but they have power and they choose to act on urges to control the conditions, they become the dictator. So that was so amazing, wasn't it? To
oh my God, that to me, well, it's once again, I immediately took that to a business sense, right? I immediately was like, oh my God, that's the difference between a good manager and a bad manager, right? I mean, good and bad being subjective, but somebody that you really connect with is somebody that doesn't play that role, right?
Yeah.
But if you have those limiting beliefs, that's the thing that you struggle with. If you have that limiting belief inside you, you're creating this person in your life. I had all those limiting beliefs inside me. I needed my business partner to come and fuel that that fan, that flame. I needed him to do that so I could get to a place where I was ready to rip my skin off, because I wanted to be different. I wanted to understand why I felt this way, right? How can I not feel this way, right? That's that tipping point that limiting beliefs create within you. You get to the point where you're mentally exhausted. Where you're like, this isn't how it's supposed to be, right? And if it is this way, I mean, then we really haven't improved since the Middle Ages. But we have improved, and we have advanced.
Yes, that's always interesting as well, isn't it? Because if you think about World War II and the Holocaust, like when I was born, that wasn't all that long ago. And even now, it's not very long ago, really. And I often wonder, well, have we really changed? And in terms of human nature, before I did this work, I would have said, well, no, we haven't changed. And sometimes you can see that similar things could happen. You can see the rise of irrational movements and hatred and all the rest of it. But then on the other hand, if the vibration of the planet has been constantly rising and each new generation of children born is arriving at a higher vibration, then hopefully, I say hopefully, in a world where everything is perfect, then I would like to think that our society has actually a high vibration and we wouldn't do that again.
Well, it's so interesting you say that, right? Because then it comes back to the illusion. How strong is that illusion, right? Because even my kids are being taught Republican and Democratic thoughts in schools, in middle school and high school. This is a Republican concept, or this is a Democratic concept. No, it's not. These are just concepts. Some people adopt them, some people don't. It is, for me, I'm like, I always tell my kids, I'm like, if somebody says it, I'm like, do your own research, figure it out, see if it feels right for you. And then, if it's not done in love, like, try to find where they're coming from. But if it's not done in love, it's false. It's just false, guys. And if you take that concept, if it's not done in love, it's false. It helps you fight through some of that. But if you're not being taught that, like
Yeah.
I have kids. I mean, I grew up in New York in a very Jewish community. I'm Italian. Like here in Arizona, like World War II and the Holocaust isn't taught. Like I had to have my kids and their friends come down and I made them watch one of the episodes of Band of Brothers where they uncover Auschwitz. And I said, guys, it did happen. I'm not saying it was right, wrong, or otherwise, but to say it didn't happen is just,
Yeah.
it's
Well, it's
silly.
like people who say that 9/11 is a conspiracy theory, and yet
Yeah.
you saw stuff in New York, Manhattan.
I have a very good friend that still tells me it didn't happen. I just, I'm like, I laugh. I'm like, all right, it is, But that's the thing. It's like, I don't get angry. Like, if someone says to me that, well, that Holocaust never happened, and I've had people tell me that, I'm like, okay, like I don't, I've stopped trying to be right. I've stopped trying to control the narrative. I've stopped trying to understand, and I don't even try to control it with my kids. I want them to make their own choices. I want them to have the information they need, whatever that information is within themselves to access and say, okay, this is how. And I think that's where kids come in at a higher level. What you're saying, but man, if you're indoctrinated into a belief system, I mean, look at every religion. I mean, how many? What was it? 3 billion or 4 billion Catholics? I mean, I was born Catholic. You were born Catholic, right? I mean, we are indoctrinated into a belief system that is so strong. What does it take? It takes rock bottom. It takes bouncing off rock bottom in such an emotional way that you start asking different questions.
Yeah.
Right. And then Tony Robbins always says the quality of life is the quality of questions you ask. You started asking different questions. I started asking different questions. I had no idea where they were going to lead. Right. I picked up a video I did for Tony Robbins 3 years ago. Okay. On one of the events he was doing. And I had to send it in, right? Do the video. And it had to be like a 3-minute video about your life, your story. And it started with, hey, I'd hit rock, you to tell a story, I hit rock bottom, da, 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 da. And I said, and then I woke up one morning and I said, and my daughter had said to me, hey, Dad, are you ever going to be happy again? And I was like, oh my God, I got to change. And I opened my computer and I just started clicking away. And at that moment, that was the inspiration. I took action. I took inspired action. I didn't realize what it was then, but as I went back now and looked at that video I did, because everybody had to send in a video, that was the homework, right? You loaded them up on his Facebook page. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was the inspiration I took. That got me here. It got me to you today. That one, opening up my computer, Googling, right, personal development. Yeah, I didn't get here for 3 or 4 more years, whatever it took, but I that's what started me. That's what started the whole thing. And as I look back now and I saw that video, it was like, it just hit me like a wave. Like if we would just pay a little bit more attention to that inspired action and embrace it a little bit more, right? And that's what I think the higher vibrational level is that kids will hopefully embrace that inspiration a little bit more than maybe you and I did, right? I discounted that inspiration for years, right? And then finally, there was nothing else to do, and said, I got to get better. My kids can't see me this unhappy all the time. Yeah. So for me, I think, and I'm not that I have any, but with 2 young kids, they're a little bit more inspired to listen to that inner self. And I think, if I'm just going to guess, that's the higher level of inspiration. But if they're put in front of the person that is indoctrinating them to, I mean, think about all the decisiveness, right? We have our kids now being told, if you think blue or you think red, this person, I mean, we have people advocating for people not to get medical attention because they are vaccinated or they're not vaccinated. I'm like, we're now deciding if people should live or die. Like that's kind of insane, right? Like, I mean, we're at a point where like, what? Like we should just love everybody. I mean, people don't want to do things. Let's do our best to get people up to speed, right? So they know what's best for them, right? It's no different than our kids. Like, yeah, we want our kids to wear a jacket. Yeah, we want everyone to be vaxxed, but sometimes they're going to have to experience the cold and someone's going to have to get sick. It's going to happen. Like, okay. but we don't. It's just this incredible amount of exerting control over, I think, the younger population, and at some point that's going to explode. It's everybody's going to go, I've had enough, and they're going to do what I did, they're going to do what you did, and they're going to look for a different answer.
Well, Joshua does talk about this as being a time of awakening, great awakening, that there are more and more people open to this stuff, and I find young people are especially open to it. I'm interested in what you said before, that the kids get taught that this is a Republican or Democrat idea, and you mentioned red and blue just then, and ironically, in an example of how arbitrary these things are, like Republican is red and Democrat is blue, right? So in New Zealand, we've probably got more of a left-wing, right-wing axis than you do, because we got a traditional kind of British model here, which had the Labour unions and the Labour Party and all that. But ironically, our left-wing Labour Party is red, and our Conservative National Party, the right wing, is blue, which is the opposite. But I had a really corny joke, which I thought was quite funny, the other day about red and blue. And the question is, what is red and smells like blue paint? I'm not setting you up for the joke, but anyway. So what is
red newspaper?
What is red and smells like blue paint? Is red paint. So I just suddenly realized that, yeah, they look different, but they smell the same. So
you're right.
And so there's kind of a metaphor for what you just said about the red and blue. It's like, yeah, mine look different, but they all smell the same underlying. There's no real difference. A small perceptual difference.
I
it's a red idea or a blue idea.
And I guarantee you, if you listen to the 10 top things that were red or 10 top things are blue, whatever their ideas with, you'd love half of them on both sides. It doesn't really make a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, the Matrix used a red pill and a blue pill for a reason. Red and blue have been since the beginning of time, right? I mean, you think about, those are the two primary colors that everybody seems to rely on. I just, as I look back now and I see what's going on, when I hear what Joshua was saying, it's what he's saying is so powerful. It's just that we're all like, to me, if you just listen to a few episodes of what Gary and Joshua are saying, everything would sort of just begin to ease a little bit, right? All of these, judgments, all of these criticisms, all of these, the hate that's being spewed towards each other's, it's identifying what this universe really is, and the anger and hate we have that's being communicated from wherever, and then we repeat it and we repeat it. And if you look at what and there's been some scientific evidence to this too, this, that if you repeat a negative thought out loud, it increases its power, right? So having a negative thought in your head, 60,000 thoughts a day, right? 80% of those thoughts are negative. 60,000 thoughts a day, 80% of those are negative. 95% of those negative thoughts are repetitive from yesterday, right? So if all of those thoughts are negative, and then you start saying them out loud, like, how do you stop that momentum? It's like that Alec Baldwin story, right? It's like, here's this incredible actor who's just an amazing guy that entertains so many people, right? But he's fighting with his kids. He's calling his kid's name on telephone. They're recording stuff. He just killed a person. I mean, think about his life.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's killed people and he's abused his kids publicly on voice. I mean, he's an actor, like a phenomenal actor. He's so into the hate, into the argument, into the control. All of this momentum he creates has been going on for decades.
So I want to talk in a minute about anger and fear and control, but just in terms of the red and blue thing, if you think about the spectrum or the colors of the chakras or whatever, I mean, at one end you got the red, and the other end you got the blue and the indigo, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So they are the, red and infrared and indigo, violet, ultraviolet. They are the two extreme color ends of the spectrum, and the rest is kind of mixed in the middle. So Wayne Dyer, who I had some amazing insights, he talks about an orange juice analogy, which is that if you squeeze an orange, the only thing you can get out of an orange is orange juice, because that's all that's in there. And so he says that if a person only has love, then that's all they can emit is love. But if they have anger or fear, then those things will come out. But a person who does not have anger or fear is never going to express those, because they don't have it within them. So, you know, either the orange juice or you're a mixture of juices. And when I read that, I realized that so-called road rage is not actually about road rage. What it is that, to me, I always think orange juice. That person's got a lot of anger, and they think that that is one of the places in our society where it's okay to express that anger. There aren't too many places in our world where you can express your anger. But I guess if you're a powerful actor, maybe some people like that feel that they can be angry towards others and get away with it, because I guess they have so much power that they can be the dictator, coming back to that idea. But I also noticed that some people feel that their righteous opinion, pro or anti-mask, pro or anti-vax, pro or anti-lockdown, pro or anti-mandates, you know, for mask wearing and vaccination passes we have and all that. So that people who really believe that they're right, what that actually is partly about is the orange juice, right? If you have a lot of fear, control, and anger going on inside you, you think that this is a pretext where it's okay to actually say horrendous things and do regrettable things. And there was an instance that happened the other day that our Prime Minister was in a small town in what you would call a Secret Service vehicle. And a friend of mine, a good friend of mine I've known for many years, is what you would call a Secret Service cop, right? Like he looked after Bill Clinton when he came to New Zealand, for example. Anyway, New Zealand police are not generally armed, although sometimes they might carry a gun concealed in the trunk in the car. But this guy always has a Glock, right? Like, and he didn't learn defensive driving, he learned offensive driving. And he trains army guys in anti-terrorist tactics. So he's not a guy you've messed with, right? Lovely man, wonderful guy. Anyway, so what happened was some local women, like young women in a car, saw the Prime Minister's car leaving, and one of them in the car egged the driver on, come on, let's cut them off. And so they went, no, bro, I'll get arrested. Come on, we can get them. And they put across in front of them. But of course, the driver would have been a guy like my friend, and they're off across the curb and away. And I thought, you know what, you girls are lucky. I mean, it was phenomenal to me that they decided on the spur of the moment, and she felt a bit sheepish about it afterwards because it was all over social media, this thing. It went everywhere, the video that, as people do. And I thought they got carried away, and they were saying all these really angry, nasty things about the Prime Minister and criticizing her in all sorts of what I consider very childish ways. And I'm not a big fan of our Prime Minister, but I thought this is crazy extreme, that they just got carried away in their fear and their anger and did this crazy thing. And I thought, you know what, knowing the capabilities of the people, you know, the guys and girls, the protection squad in that car, the Secret Service people, you're very lucky that they managed to use their offensive driving techniques, because you were actually really, you know, on the edge of what could have been a life-ending or life-changing event in terms of incarceration, permanent injury, or death. And it was like, here was two people driving down the road and the thing just exploded on the spur of the moment, but only because there's so much more than orange juice in there in the first place, or they wouldn't have done that. And then secondly, they think that this whole thing about, they think the Prime Minister's controlling stuff and she's a wimp because, you know, she won't come out and talk to them. I mean, who would talk to crazy people like that? I wouldn't. And it's like, they think that it's okay to behave this way. And to me, it was like, man, that was within a whisker of a totally life-changing event for the 3 or 4 young women in that vehicle.
And, you know, it's funny when you use the analogy of the orange juice analogy, and just speaking from my own personal experience in my families, anytime you have that anger inside and you squeeze and it comes out, once it's out, you regret it. Like, it's like orange juice, once you squeeze, love comes out, you never regret it. When you know that there's something wrong, when you do something in a moment and then afterwards you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I didn't, you know, you feel something. It's that the universe is giving you that guidance, right? that, hey, you know what? Hold back on what, that is, that's fear. And you're supposed to acknowledge it and continue to take steps to get to the higher level. Except we don't. What happens is we get, and we hear, it's okay, you stood up for yourself.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You start hearing these different things, and you're like, I keep telling my kids, if you have to stand up to yourself for yourself, okay, then we've completely missed who we are.
Well, that was me, having my rebel triggered by my colleague at work, by my co-owner of the business, that he actually was that dictator. I now realize, but now I would, it's 101 ways. It's like, oh, okay, I don't have to take that personally. It's not personal. It's actually his issue. It's not mine. And he didn't have to trigger my, my rebel child. And it'd be interesting to know if I ever encountered, I guess, someone to attract an event like that again, because I don't need to. But it was painful and unpleasant.
Yeah, that you just said that is the continuing attracting those events and how powerful it is. Well, then it goes to it's which fear. So one is this, this fear of so if it's fear of loss, it's fear of
Unknown and rejection. Yep.
And rejection, right? So the first one might be the fear of rejection, like you don't receive me, and then it might just be the fear of losing the job or being thrown out, right? Or I had all of them at once, right? I had the fear of not being respected, of not being accepted. Then I had the fear of losing my company, right? All that happened, and then I had the fear of the unknown, like I didn't know what I was going to do to pay a bill. All three collapsed on me with the same individual. As I said, he was the greatest gift I was ever given. A tremendous person. I mean, I was with this guy for 15 years. So, I asked him to play this role in my life, and he played it to a T. He was good.
Yeah.
He got an Academy Award on it. Right. But that's what so the question right now is what role is everybody else? If I'm going through this again, and I am going through it on some level, right? Not nowhere near the trigger it was, and I don't really, but it is sort of that fear of loss. It's like, okay, I built everything back up. Am I going to lose it all again? Right. Yeah. And then it's like trusting, if you lose it all again, it's going to be perfect. That's that moment, right? How do you get there? I'm not there yet. And I'm constantly asking myself that, just not there yet.
Well, we can pick that up another time, because I know you got to go in 2 or 3 minutes. And there's also that extraordinary conversation that I had with Joshua about the origin of the universe, you might say, that I would like to talk to you about sometime.
I really can't wait to go through this, because it's outrageous. Like 355, anybody who's listening, Joshua Live, episode 355, last question in there, right around the 47-minute mark. It's insane. It's such a great question. He gives you just such great feedback.
It's astonishing, really. It's just astonishing content, isn't
it? It's unbelievable content, by the way. And it's unbelievable how everything, that one episode, how everything flowed from, doesn't make a difference which question he was asking. It all flowed. It took his, from the very first question to the very last, that whole episode went on, kept going up and up and up. I've listened to it now a dozen times, and I'm going to continue to, plus I'm reading both, what you had given me on both. Thanks for sending me that stuff.
No, it's been a pleasure, and it's actually a really good study for me to do that. So my closing comment is going to be about my deep fascination that you're familiar with. My deep fascination with the Big Bang theory of the creation of physical universe, our indigenous Maori creation myth, which always seemed to me to be a close parallel, and a third close parallel, which is Joshua saying that Source existed, and then once Source contemplated, who am I? Then the physical world was created, boom, because it was only with the creation of the physical that Source could explore what Source is, which is really another way of, the creation of, not the creation of consciousness, but how consciousness created the physical universe, shall we say, which
that's
the expanding, and also that the universe is expanding, which the scientists tell us, which is kind of what Joshua was saying. So to me, those three parallels between the traditional mythology, I've studied a lot of traditional mythology, of many cultures, and also Maori indigenous mythology and folk tales as well. And so that stuff, that kind of traditional knowledge has always fascinated me, as well as the science. So do you have a parting comment?
I want to continue this conversation because right then and there helps me more than anything else. What Joshua says is that when Source went to explore who I am, he created the physical world so we could explore that. We're down here exploring who we are each and every time, and we're all from the same source. We're all exploring the same one single concept that the universe was created to explore, and we're all doing it at the same time, simultaneously.
I'm going to close with a scientific fact, which is that we are made of the elements and stuff that was created in the stars, because the stars have helium and hydrogen, and because of the intense gravity and temperatures in there, that's where all the other elements of the periodic table came from. But essentially, our physical bodies are made of stuff that literally came from the stars. So my parting comment is, we are stardust. We truly are. We truly are. And that
I love that.
is a fact.